Hey guys, Morphologis here and welcome back. Tonight's the first installment of Patchology, a new series that I've started with Wasted Space where we talk about the latest update in Space Engineers. This Thursday's update is 1.095, which has introduced a number of fixes and balance changes. Now these balance changes are the highlight of the update as they have changed the game in some pretty significant ways, which we will discuss in this video. If you're interested in the patch notes, I've listed them in the info section of the video so you guys can view them as you listen. Alright, so the update today, 1.095, introduced a number of changes. Nothing super significant in the way of adding new content. However, they did do a lot of fixes and a lot of tweaks of existing stuff. And I have to say that despite the fact that it doesn't look like much, it seems to be quite a bit because the wheel friction and the way wheels work have been a huge issue for quite a while in Space Engineers. I think that that's just fantastic. Go ahead, sorry.
I think it's a pretty significant change, actually. Not just the wheel thing, but the general rebalancing. But, I mean, the wheel thing in particular that we're sort of kind of messing around with now is kind of pretty obvious how much it's been improved over what was the previous setup with wheel friction. So if this is kind of an idea of what the other changes are going to be like, I'm kind of intrigued.
Definitely, and right now I'm doing something, I'm just turning at the highest speed possible, and I can tell you before, okay, I'm about to flip over. That wouldn't have happened. What would have happened at this point is I would be sliding sideways into a rock. This is completely different. Go up that hill, see what happens. So, aside from the wheel stuff, there was a number of other changes that happened. Oh, wow, yeah, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Apparently no problem. We just go straight up, something like that now, which feels more appropriate for a vehicle like this, other than getting grounded out. Nice to see that you had the same, but that feels appropriate for a vehicle like this, whereas before it was, you had to go to some pretty ridiculous lengths to actually be able to get up a slope like that.
Yeah, you'd have to get some speed, and even if once you got the speed, trying to stop after you got over the hill would just leave you flying through the air and unable to stop. So this is much better. You could pretty much go up at a slow speed. Did you try parking on the side? You're just parked there, not moving.
Yeah.
I also seem to recall that there was issues where if you just parked a vehicle, it may just start moving on its own.
Yeah, it would just roll around like really weirdly. So again, another noticeable change.
Oh, that's just fantastic. So, do you have... Oh, ooh, okay, cool. This was your crawler that you had.
Well, it did make me wonder that if this is how things are, how does the crawler now behave? Because this was obviously designed to get around the slightly ropey wheel physics. So this is something that was over-engineered to some extent. And either now it's completely useless, or now it's very, very handy because it can go up something totally ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, I must see this. It is quite slow. Did you purposely set a low speed or because like you would fly up in the air, or?
I purposely set a low speed because wheel friction seemed to be something that you didn't particularly want to mess with. You're better off being in a scenario where you have a sort of a lot of friction because you haven't broken the friction yet. So from that respect, it actually did sort of resemble normal physics. As soon as you break your traction, it started to slide more than it should. Whereas now, I would say, well, actually, I can't really tell from that hill whether there's a huge amount of difference. It seems to slide less than it used to. Even then, it used to be pretty good, but now it seems to be better, even.
Wow. Yeah, you just went straight up that thing, no issue. Though I do seem to recall that the video you showcased this in, it was able to make it up and down hills pretty well at its current speed.
Just not with... Now, it had extra slip involved that is just not present now.
Yeah, that's just as remarkable that just that little tweak made such a massive difference. It gives me a lot of hope, actually, that, just them going back and tweaking existing features could make such a big difference in the way that you play the game.
Well, and for a lot of people, the ultimate hope is leaning towards what's going to happen when it comes to the multiplayer patch. And so this is an interesting thing to be doing with that on the horizon, because it suggests that at least to some extent, Keen believed that the game needs further balancing before planets and the big multiplayer stuff is viable, which I kind of agree with. Don't know about you, but I always felt that there were some things that did not fit with what's potentially going to be coming.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But like, multiplayer is huge, and personally, I would like to see that come before planets, or before any future feature that's so significant, because what's a real problem right now, especially for like if you want to have a big role play server or a big dedicated server where you can go and kind of interact with players, is you just have such lag issues, and it really breaks the fun of the game, unfortunately. So I really want to see them do more of this. I know it's not as exciting, but really it's a huge, like, think of the impact it would make on newer players and retention. I think there is an issue. I'm not going to say, I think I may have heard from somebody credible that the retention on the game wasn't so great. And one of the reasons could be because it is, there are so many issues with it. But this just gives me a lot of faith that yes, they know, and yes, they're going to try to fix the problems that give people a bad impression of the game.
100%. 100%. I mean, and not only that, but at times I felt Keen have been a little bit too focused on getting that next feature out and sort of making sure that they made every single update something that was exciting and everyone wanted to see. Whereas for a lot of the guys that have been the people sticking around for a long while, there's been sort of little bits and bobs that you feel really would enhance the game and add to its longevity if they were sorted out, and the wheels are one of them. Now I feel like driving this around now, it feels like I want to go and make a racetrack, which is something I know a lot of people have tried and then been disappointed with when you go and see what the results are, and you're like, well, this isn't really racing, is it? This is just about trying to keep a car onto the track, if I can, please, and going in the direction I intend. Whereas now, absolutely no problem. So I think, yeah, it's a very good sign, and something that I like. Multiplayer needs to come before planets. Some of this stuff I think was also very intrinsically needed to come before we get to those stages as well.
Absolutely, and I think this is definitely a precursor to planets, like something that has to come before planets come. You really have to think about it. Like, sure, we could have planets, which would be fantastic, but think of trying to get around it efficiently in like a survival situation. You want to build a vehicle, sure, you do it, but it's super hilly, right? Or you could imagine from the pictures that have been released, the terrain. Now, imagine the old system trying to get through that terrain. Oh, God, it would just have been insane. It would have been unplayable, really.
Well, and that's why I think it was so important that this stuff came early. In particular with some of the stuff I've tested with ground vehicles, I was really worried about what we could end up being like when wheel friction and just friction in general was such a weird physics as far as Space Engineers is concerned, and they didn't seem to mention anything about changing it. And then all of a sudden you get a patch like this, which is, from this very brief experience, seems to have fixed a lot of those concerns.
Now, there are a few I do want to keep talking on this because this is such a great point, but there are a few other kind of significant changes that have been made. And one of them that I noticed is that the thruster ship, like the large ship thrusters, have been increased by 3 times in power. And something that was apparent before is that you could actually have, it was more efficient and faster to have more small ones than one large one, and now it doesn't seem to be so much the case. I'm not quite sure how much of a difference we'd notice other than a slight increase in acceleration. Other than that, is there anything else that really jumps out at you on the list of balance changes?
Well, firstly, on the thruster front, I think there is one element to that that's kind of important, which is that it was only large ship thrusters that have had their thrust increased. So it's going to become more viable to build the big, large ships versus building, small ships have been almost a little bit too easy to make. You prefer the small ships because they're very light and you can fit the same components on without the same mass. And this seems to correct that. But on top of that, and I think perhaps even more important, is the whole talk about how batteries and solar panels are now a good early game measure. Now, I haven't tested this yet, But not only is that massive from the perspective of early game, but it's also something, again, I think a lot of people have been really looking forward to the idea of solar panels being like a viable power source. Because right now, they're fun to experiment with, but they're really not that good.
Yeah, you've got some on the roof of your base over here. Now, I seem to recall in Survival, which I don't play super often, but do have some experience in and know people who do, that solar panels really never really made too much sense. They look great and they work, but they're super expensive because of the components, and oftentimes it's just better to have a reactor. Now it would seem that starting off, which, I mean, it seems sort of more intuitive this way, that having solar panels is a good way, a good power source if you're just beginning in Survival, which I just feel like it should have been that way to begin with.
I completely agree. And not only that, but I can back up what you're saying about the Survival thing. They just weren't viable because the materials involved made them inaccessible until the point where you had so much uranium it didn't matter. You didn't even worry about that sort of thing. And so the fact that they've both made, by the sounds of things, solar panels and batteries more powerful, more energy efficient, which is what they needed, but also they've changed the costs of items in general. And I noticed that solar panels are one of the things that are going to be a lot easier to create. It means
that was one of the big walls.
You've got this twofold benefit of it's easier to make them, and then they're giving you more benefit from them as well, I suspect. So you've got quite a lot of benefit from that, and I think it's a really good way of going about it. It changes the early game from being this sort of massive drive to get uranium.
Whoops, your little buggy doesn't have super great clearance. It just ran straight into a geological feature.
This is, in fact, not my little buggy. This is one of the planet competition entries, but it's interesting to see how well it now performs. I've tweaked the steering angle a bit on mine, and this is brilliant. I can't wait to get involved with some racing now. This is so much improved over what wheel friction used to behave. I changed the steering angle. It's now behaving more like you'd expect again. I'm super stoked about this. Let the wheeled vehicles roll.
Oh, yes.
Terrible puns.
So, do you have any concluding thoughts? And as we give those concluding thoughts, do you want to find me and we can have a little bit of a race before we can conclude this? Or as we conclude this, where are you?
All right, let's meet up where the base is, and we'll do a little run around the inside of the tracks. That's a nice little course.
All right.
And as far as concluding thoughts is concerned, well, I'm excited by this. This is, and obviously this is all with a pinch of salt because I have not fully gone through and looked at everything actually myself. I just look at the patch notes so far for the most part. But I'm stoked for what they're trying to achieve by tweaking this stuff. It shows to me that they really understand how the planets thing is going to need to work in order to be fun for people to play, which was one of my concerns. You know, planets could just be a big hindrance. Suddenly you're working in gravity and there's no benefit of being down there. Things with wheels on don't even work particularly well, so you're just messing around in a gravity field that's not friendly. You know, it would be really uncomfortable.
That's something I really thought about a lot, for sure. It's just the usefulness of it. Because I always thought, once you get down to planets, what's going to stop you from just making a ship to get around as a more efficient means of travel? This really answers that question quite well. Oh, okay. I'm not even quite sure. Are we going right counterclockwise?
Just follow the railroad tracks around.
All right. That rock seems like the first. Oh God, I'm losing control. I didn't tweak mine at all. Yeah, I'm super excited. Mike, in conclusion, okay, we're going to the right side of that rock. Oh geez. Okay, I think it's a little light still. If we had actual gravity on this thing, it probably would work a lot better. Oh yeah! Haha! Give me opportunity to get past.
Damn, son.
Oh no! I'm bouncing a lot. That seems more of a problem with... now, there are still issues now with this map, is because we don't have real gravity on. We have just a gravity generator, right?
No, this has a sort of middle house, which is the enhanced gravity generators by Digi, which are good, but not the full way to natural gravity, and so not quite the same as hopefully planets will be. but certainly a better representation than normal gravity generators. I think the main thing is the suspension on these was obviously set up for a time where wheels had no friction, and so it didn't matter if your suspension was very, very stiff, as these appear to be. So again, it's just another cool sign that there's a lot more potential now in wheeled craft and what you could do with wheeled craft. The friction difference is immense. I mean, these things are flinging themselves up the hills in here with no problem. I'm really stoked about that, and I'm really stoked about what this all means, as I said, for how they're thinking about planets and what's going to be interesting on planets, and also what's going to be interesting for the game in general, because I'm pretty certain that while they haven't sort of completely come out and confirmed it, there's been mention. Oh, nice roll.
My victory roll.
There's been mention from Marek that they're now thinking that the MP needs to come prior to the planets, despite what they originally said. I love how easy it is to roll these now.
Yeah, it is so easy to roll them. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, just intuitively, I feel like you absolutely have to have a stable multiplayer build. Otherwise, people are going to get into it. They're going to want to have, be there with their friends. I mean, this is a multiplayer game. This is really built on building something cool and then showing off to your friends, or on YouTube as we do, what you've done that's so cool. And it's just honestly not possible with a car alarm going off in the background. But really, it's not possible with a poor multiplayer. It really isn't. And it would be so frustrating, especially even for older players, to get into it and you're like phasing through the surface of the planet, or you've fallen through the surface of the planet. I can just see that happening if it were to go forward in its current form. As excited as I am about planets, I have to tell you, this week, I've been trying so hard to work with the source code to get access to it, and I have just not been successful. That's how excited I am. But I would rather still see a successful build and a stable build of multiplayer.
Well,
and not being able to do this.
Yeah, well, that's also true. But the multiplayer has always been the dream of everyone all along, so everybody's got their fingers crossed for that, I'm sure. Still, I think this is the first step along that way, and let's hope that next week's update is something sort of another step in the same direction.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I think that a lot of these changes are something that you're going to have to see through just playing the game and experiencing the changes. Something that we'll notice more over time. But yeah, I'm excited for next week. I will definitely be coming back for then, right?
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. It's been great. Hopefully you guys will tune in next week as well. And that's it for now.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take it easy.